Good evening. It is good for us to be here. And again, I just appreciate so much those of you that have come out for this tonight. I know it's different. And if you are like me and you were raised in the church, then anytime we do something different, it's a little weird and it's a little scary because we don't always embrace the change, and which is not necessarily a bad thing. If what we're doing is good and right and scriptural, then I think we need to examine any proposed change and make sure that it's something that is gonna have a positive impact, and it's gonna move us in a positive direction according to the scriptures. And so as we started talking about some things that we could do, that would be maybe some appropriate changes to things that we've been used to doing for so many years, and we kind of started brainstorming some things and came up with the idea of kind of focusing on service once a month and having the opportunity to go out and serve and especially in a way that connects us with some of our members that are not able to be with us all the time because of their age or their health or various reasons. I got really excited about it, and I got really very hopeful that it would be successful and that we could find the benefit in it and find the ways in which it's going to bless our congregation, bless our membership here, and then as we even think about possible ways that that this activity or this what we're doing here can grow and can kind of branch out into some other areas, then I think there are a lot of possibilities for us to affect even the larger community and maybe have this become not just a service outreach, but maybe even a service opportunity, but maybe even an outreach opportunity within the community. So one of the things that I'd like to ask you to do as we kind of get this off the ground and get it going is think big, dream big about what we can do with this time that we spend together and in serving side by side with one another. And as we put forth this effort to go out and serve, I think God will bless us in those things, and He will increase the opportunities as we take advantage of the opportunities that He places before us. He will bless us with more opportunity. So I want to spend just a few minutes tonight, and this is going to be short. We're not going to do a full-sized, normal sermon type lesson, and then go out and do our stuff. We're going to have a lesson and an opportunity here for us to fellowship together and worship and be encouraged, and then take that encouragement out on the road with us as we go. So I just want to spend a few minutes talking about service and a couple of probably familiar passages for most of us that are, especially if you're the usual Sunday night crowd, then these are things that we would have spoken about before. But let's look first at John chapter 13. If you're going to talk about service and just ask in general, what's a lesson on service that you remember from the New Testament? Probably one that many people would bring up is this lesson here, where Jesus is in the upper room with his disciples on the night of his betrayal, as they have just observed the Passover feast together. And then Jesus takes an opportunity to get a basin of water and a towel, and he goes around and he begins washing the disciples' feet. And that's kind of something that we don't really relate to very much, because we don't really do that in our culture. I don't want to see your feet. I'm not a big foot guy. Well, I'm kind of a big foot guy, but I'm not really into feet. So this from the standpoint of just what Jesus is doing, the details of what Jesus is doing, it's kind of weird. It's kind of different, something that we don't, we obviously don't practice and we don't look at, but it's the larger lesson that Jesus is getting at, and it's not really about foot washing. I mean, that's the vehicle that Jesus uses to teach the lesson, but it's not really about foot washing. It's really about service. And we know that because of what Jesus says about it after he completes the job. So if you look, beginning of verse 12, this is after he's done washing their feet. Then verse 12 says, "So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table again, said to them, 'Do you know what I have done to you?'" Well, if it was about foot washing, that was kind of a silly question, because that was part of their culture. They knew about that. They knew about washing their feet in their culture, and so for Jesus to ask, do you know what I just did? Well, yeah. I mean, we know what you just did. We do this all the time. And so that tells us it wasn't really about the foot washing. He says, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for so I am. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you should do as I did to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, neither is one who sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. There's two main points that I want to get out of this example before we move on to our second example tonight. And the first example is this, or the first lesson is this, that Jesus gave an example for his disciples to follow. He said, I did this for you to show you the way that I want you to treat other people. Again, it's not about foot washing. It's about serving. It's about humbling yourself, and it's about putting other people's needs ahead of your own, and literally lowering yourself to the point of stooping before somebody and doing the job that needs to be done. They all knew that job needed to be done. They all live in a culture where that type of routine was something that should have been taken care of by a servant at the house where they were being hosted, but because they were not in any of their own homes, there were no servants present, and none of them stooped to the level of a servant to do that for one another until Jesus did it. And Jesus said, this is the example I'm giving you, that you need to humble yourselves and you need to be willing to serve even when nobody else is. And that's what I want my followers to do. And so our first lesson from this is Jesus gave us an example of service, and we need to be willing to serve. The second thing that I want us to get out of this is in verse 17. He says, if you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. If you live the way that I ask you to live, if you live a life of service, doing the things that I've taught you to do in the way that I've taught you to do them, then you are going to live a blessed life. And that's counterintuitive, especially in our day and age, our culture, where where we want to be kind of the preeminence, or be the one that's in charge, or be the one that's above everybody else, or we want to have the fame or the glory, or whatever it is that culture is telling us we should go for. And Jesus is saying, no, the route to happiness, the route to blessing is through serving others. And it's hard to understand that sometimes until you try it. Until you start living the life that Jesus has lived, it doesn't seem like it really will work. It doesn't seem like that's really the route to happiness, the route to being blessed in this life. But Jesus says, no, here's the example that I'm giving you to serve one another. And I'm telling you that if you do it, then this is the route to happiness. This is the route to blessing. And so it's one of those things where, he gives us the example to do it, and we either obey or we don't. And he tells us the reason why we should do it is to be blessed, and we either believe him or we don't. So are we going to follow his example and do as he's asked us to do and trust that he's going to bless us by doing so, or are we going to resist what he's told us to do, and are we going to try for blessing and happiness through other means? And so you know the right answer to that. I mean, that's a rhetorical question. You know the answer that we're looking for there. We need to trust Jesus, and we need to live the life that he has told us to live. And in doing so, we will find the blessing that so often we're looking for that we can't find in other places, because that's not where it's at. It's in a life of service that he has told us to do. So that's our first example. Our second example of service, if you had to go to another common or popular scripture that people would turn to in talking about service in the New Testament, I think you'd go to Matthew 25. And in Matthew 25, we have Jesus offering a couple of parables early in the chapter, and then Jesus tells us what the judgment will be like at the end of the chapter, beginning in verse 31. And so it's a little bit of a lengthy reading, but not too bad. And I'm going to read 31 through 46, and then just draw one or 2 points from that like we did from the last passage, and then we'll be ready to wrap up. Verse 31, but when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. And all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he'll put the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick and in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even to the least of them, you did it to me." Then he will say also to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they themselves also will answer, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So there's, again, two things that I want us to notice from this passage about service. Number one, notice the word blessing again. We just took note of that in the passage with John, in John, where Jesus has given his disciples an example of what to do, and he tells them they will be blessed if they do what he says. And then notice the distinction between how the sheep and the goats are divided up in Matthew 25. In verse 34, when he's speaking to the sheep, he says, "The king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed of my Father.'" How is it that they are blessed by God? How is it that they are the ones who are designated as those who are blessed? Well, it's because they have lived a life of service. It's because when they saw somebody's need, they fulfilled that need. They did what they could to meet the needs of people that they came into contact with. And to the extent that they didn't even realize they were doing it, right? I mean, it became such a part of who they were. It became such a part of their character, a part of their daily routine that when Jesus said, "You were serving other people," and they said, when did we do that? When did we see you in need in these ways? And we took care of you. And Jesus said, "Well, you did that every time you served somebody. You took care of me." And because of that, they were blessed. And so this blessing that Jesus is talking about, very often it's common for us to talk about that word. You know, that word could be translated as happiness, right? So in the Beatitudes, when it's "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth," it's happy. Happy are the meek, and that's a good translation. It's okay to think of that, but it's not just about now happiness. It's not just about, well, if I want to be happy today, I need to go out and serve somebody, or I need to find a way to make somebody else's life better. That's good. That's a good start. But it's not just about today's happiness. It's about eternal happiness. It's about forever happiness. It's about God blessing us in the next life for the way that we've lived this life. And I'm not talking about earning salvation. I'm not talking about meritorious works. I'm talking about living the life that God has called us to live. And because we live the life he's called us to live, he blesses us with the next life. He is the one who pours out that blessing. And so that blessing it follows, it tracks through from the example that Jesus has given to the command that he has given to the final recognition that God gives to the service that we provide for other people. That blessing is there all along the way. And then notice those that are not blessed. What are they? They are cursed. And so what a terrible distinction to have to make. What a terrible comparison to have to make, to think about those who sought happiness in their life, in this life, by trying to just provide for themselves and not taking note of other people's needs and not serving other people. They were constantly just serving themselves and finding that temporary, physical, momentary happiness, that earthly joy that they were getting out of this life, only to find out that momentary happiness was a curse. And now their eternity is cursed because they didn't live their lives the way that God wanted them to in this life. And so service is so important to us in making sure that we are striving for that blessing that only God can give. The final thing that I want to notice from this passage is that it's the needs of others that dictate the service that's being performed. We need to be sure that as we offer or have a heart to serve other people, that we don't attack it from the standpoint of, well, here are the three things that I have to offer, and so if I can find somebody that needs one of those three things, I'll be happy to serve them. But if the people that I come into contact don't need any of the three things I have to offer, then I'm just going to go home. That's not the way it works. It's the needs of those who are being served that dictate the jobs that are being done by those who are serving. And so as we kind of begin this, this activity of doing this once a month where we're looking for ways to serve other people, let yourself be challenged. Let yourself look for ways that people are in need around us. And when you see a need, don't be daunted by the idea, well, I don't know how to meet that need, or that need's too big for me, or that need is something that's beyond my ability. Well, we've got a room full of people that can help with that. We've got resources that are available to try to meet the needs of people that are in our fellowship and in our community. And if you don't know how to meet that need, maybe somebody else does. But be sure to share that need and share the idea of that need with other people so that we can try to meet the needs of those who are around us. Because we don't want to just be people who are saying, well, I can't help you there because I don't know how to do that. It's the needs of those who are hurting that should dictate what we are out doing. And we want to make sure that we are meeting their needs. The final thought I'll leave you with is from Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10. Ecclesiastes 9:10, the preacher there says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. Let's find ways to serve, and let's do it with our might. Let's do it to the best of our ability. Let's go out there and really try to find a way to brighten the lives of the people that we come into contact with, and try to find ways that we can encourage and uplift. And I think that when we do that, we'll be surprised at how much encouragement we receive as a means of doing that ourselves. This evening, we don't want the opportunity to go by that we've met and we haven't offered the Lord's invitation. And so if you have any need tonight that you'd like to request prayers, or if you have questions, or if you have a need for baptism, or whatever the case might be, we want to offer that opportunity tonight. So if you have any need, would you please come while we stand and sing?